Lucas Parker stood in the driveway with a smile he couldn't hide. The late afternoon sun painted the neighborhood in warm golden light as he wrapped an arm around his wife, Jenny. "We finally did it," he whispered. Jenny laughed, tears glistening in her eyes. "Our own house." The neighborhood looked perfect. White fences. Fresh-cut lawns. Children riding bicycles beneath towering oak trees. Not a single piece of trash littered the streets. It felt too perfect. The real estate agent had practically begged them to buy quickly. The price had been suspiciously low for such a beautiful home, but Lucas hadn't questioned his luck. Now, standing before the two-story house with its pale gray siding and black shutters, he felt like his life was finally beginning. Neither of them noticed the old woman across the street staring from behind her curtains. Neither noticed the way she slowly made the sign of the cross. The first few days were wonderful. They unpacked boxes, painted walls, and planned their future. Then the letter arrived. It was sealed inside a thick black envelope. Across the front were 3 crimson words. Homeowners Association. Lucas rolled his eyes. Great. HOA people. Jenny laughed. How bad can they be? Inside was a list of rules. No decorations without approval. No guests after midnight. No loud music. No exterior modifications. No leaving the neighborhood after sunset without written permission. Lucas frowned. What kind of rule is that? Jenny snatched the paper. That's ridiculous. The last rule was typed in bold red letters. If the siren sounds, return to your home immediately. Lock all doors. Turn off all lights. Do not look outside. The couple exchanged confused glances. What is this, some weird joke? Lucas asked. That evening they attended the HOA welcome meeting. The meeting was held inside an old stone building at the center of the neighborhood. The room was packed. Everyone looked nervous. Nobody smiled. At the front stood HOA President Walter Briggs. A tall man with silver hair and eyes so dark they almost appeared black. He welcomed Lucas and Jenny politely. Then his expression hardened. There are rules here, he said. You follow them, and you'll be safe. Jenny raised her hand. Safe from what? The room instantly fell silent. Every face turned toward her. Walter stared. For a moment, Lucas thought he saw genuine fear in the man's eyes. Then Walter smiled. From accidents. Nobody laughed. On the way home, Jenny whispered. Something's wrong with these people. Lucas nodded. The entire neighborhood felt different now. The streets seemed emptier. The shadows seemed longer. Even the air felt heavier. As they walked past the old woman from across the street, she suddenly grabbed Jenny's wrist. Her fingers felt ice cold. Leave. Jenny froze. What? The old woman's eyes filled with tears. Leave before the first siren. Then she released her and hurried away. That night neither of them slept well. At exactly 2:17 a.m. Lucas awoke. Something had pulled him from sleep. A sound. He listened carefully. Scratch. 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 The noise came from outside. Near the bedroom window. Lucas slowly sat up. Jenny remained asleep beside him. The scratching continued. Slow. Deliberate. Like fingernails dragging across wood. His heartbeat quickened. He stepped toward the curtain. The scratching immediately stopped. Silence. A terrible silence. Lucas reached for the fabric. Then. A distant siren wailed through the darkness. A long, mournful howl. The sound echoed throughout the neighborhood. Instantly, Lights shut off in neighboring homes. One by one. Like dominoes falling. Lucas stood frozen. The siren grew louder. Longer. Angrier. Then he heard screams. Far away. Somewhere outside. Human screams. Followed by something else. A roar. Deep. Inhuman. Hungry. Jenny jolted awake. What is that? Lucas didn't answer. Because at that moment, something slammed against the outside wall of their house. The entire bedroom shook. Another impact followed. Then another. Heavy footsteps circled the home. Something enormous was outside. Something breathing. Something that sounded nothing like an animal. The creature stopped directly beneath their bedroom window. A foul odor drifted through the cracks. Rotting flesh. Burning sulfur. Then came a voice. A horrible voice. Low. Wet. Gurgling. Leet, U.S., in. Jenny's face turned white. Lucas backed away from the window. The thing outside began scratching again. Slowly. Patiently. Like it knew exactly where they were. And it wasn't alone. Because all around the neighborhood, dozens of other voices suddenly joined it from the darkness. Begging. Whispering. Laughing. Crying. And scratching. The first siren had sounded. And the nightmare had begun. The scratching continued until sunrise. Lucas and Jenny sat huddled together on the bedroom floor, too terrified to move. Outside, the creatures whispered endlessly. Sometimes they sounded like strangers. Sometimes they sounded like neighbors. And sometimes they sounded like family members who were hundreds of miles away. Lucas. A woman's voice drifted through the darkness. It sounded exactly like his mother. Please help me. Jenny gripped his arm. Don't listen to it. The voice came again. Closer this time. I know you're in there. Lucas felt ice run through his veins. His mother had died 3 years ago. Yet the voice outside was perfect. Every word. Every breath. Every tiny detail. The scratching resumed. Scratch. 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 Then, as suddenly as it had begun, everything went silent. Morning arrived. Sunlight flooded through the windows. Birds chirped. The nightmare seemed impossible. Lucas cautiously peeked outside. Nothing. The neighborhood looked peaceful. Perfect. Normal. Except for one thing. Deep claw marks covered the exterior walls of their house. The wood looked shredded by gigantic talons. Jenny stared in horror. What the hell was outside? Neither of them had an answer. An hour later, someone knocked on their front door. 3 sharp knocks. Lucas nearly jumped out of his skin. Standing outside was Walter Briggs, the HOA president. His dark eyes immediately noticed the claw marks. You survived. Jenny crossed her arms. Survived what? Walter stepped inside without being invited. He closed the door behind him. Then he spoke quietly. The monsters. Lucas laughed nervously. The monsters? Walter didn't smile. I am completely serious. The room fell silent. For the next 20 minutes, Walter explained the impossible. More than a century ago, the land beneath the neighborhood had been the site of a terrible occult ritual. Something had gone wrong. A doorway had opened. Not to another place. But to hell itself. The doorway could never be fully closed. Instead, every generation of residents had maintained a fragile balance. A bargain. The HOA enforced rules that kept the creatures trapped. If everyone obeyed, the monsters remained outside. If the rules were broken, people died. Terribly. Jenny shook her head. This is insane. Walter simply stared. Last year a family ignored the siren. His voice grew quieter. Their house was found empty. Lucas swallowed. What happened to them? Walter hesitated. The walls were covered in blood. Walter handed them a small black booklet. Its cover read, "Rules of Survival." Inside were dozens of instructions. Some seemed ordinary. Others were horrifying. Never answer voices outside after dark. Never open a door during a siren. Never acknowledge anyone standing in your yard after midnight. If you see glowing red eyes through a window, leave that room immediately. If a creature enters your house, do not run upstairs. Jenny's hands trembled. This can't be real. Walter pointed toward the claw marks. Can it? Neither answered. As Walter prepared to leave, Lucas asked the question that had haunted him all morning. Why stay here? Walter froze. For the first time, genuine fear appeared in his eyes. Because nobody can leave. The room suddenly felt colder. What do you mean? Jenny asked. Walter looked toward the front window. Everyone who tries to move away disappears. Silence. Some make it a few miles. Some make it a few states. But eventually. He stopped speaking. Lucas felt sick. Eventually what? Walter whispered. They come back. That evening the neighborhood seemed different. Lucas noticed boarded windows on several houses. He noticed cameras mounted everywhere. Most disturbing of all. Nobody was outside after sunset. Not a single person. The streets emptied as darkness approached. Doors locked. Curtains closed. Lights dimmed. It was like an entire town preparing for war. At 11:47 p.m., another sound echoed through the neighborhood. Not the siren. A scream. A human scream. A man's scream. Lucas rushed to the window. Across the street, a neighbor stood in his yard. The man appeared confused. As if sleepwalking. Jenny grabbed Lucas. Don't look. But it was too late. Something moved in the shadows behind the neighbor. Something huge. Something with far too many limbs. The creature unfolded itself from the darkness. Its body resembled a spider made of human flesh. Its head twisted completely backward. Its mouth stretched impossibly wide. The neighbor finally saw it. His scream shattered the night. Then the creature pounced. The lights across the neighborhood instantly went dark. And from somewhere far away, the siren began to howl once more. The siren screamed through the neighborhood. Lucas and Jenny stumbled backward from the window, hearts pounding. Outside, the neighbors' terrified screams echoed across the street. Then came a wet crunch. A sound like bones being crushed. The screaming stopped instantly. Silence. Absolute silence. Jenny buried her face against Lucas's chest. Please tell me we didn't just see that. Lucas couldn't speak. Because deep down, he knew they had. The monsters were real. And they were trapped here with them. The next morning, police cars arrived. But something felt wrong. The officers showed no urgency. No concern. No shock. Across the street, workers quietly cleaned the neighbor's yard. By noon, every trace of the attack had vanished. No blood. No evidence. Nothing. As if the man had never existed. When Lucas asked another resident what happened, the woman immediately looked away. We don't talk about it. Then she hurried inside. That afternoon, Jenny began organizing boxes in the basement. The house had an old stone cellar beneath it. The previous owner had left it completely empty. Or so they thought. Jenny carried a box down the wooden stairs. Halfway down, she froze. Someone was breathing. A slow, raspy breath. Coming from somewhere in the darkness. She listened carefully. The breathing stopped. Jenny laughed nervously. Just my imagination. She continued downward. At the bottom of the stairs, she noticed something strange. The far wall looked newer than the others. Its bricks were cleaner. Different. As though someone had sealed something behind them. The moment she touched the wall. Thump. Jenny jumped. The sound had come from inside it. She raced upstairs and found Lucas. There's something in the basement. Lucas sighed. After everything we've seen, that's not exactly reassuring. I'm serious. Together they returned downstairs. The basement felt colder now. Much colder. Lucas approached the strange wall. Nothing happened. See, he said. Probably old pipes. Then. Thump. Both of them froze. The sound came again. Louder this time. Something was definitely behind the bricks. Something alive. That evening, they visited Walter Briggs. The HOA president listened carefully. When Lucas described the wall, Walter's face turned pale. Show me. Immediately. An hour later, Walter stood in their basement staring at the sealed bricks. For several seconds, he said nothing. Then he whispered a curse under his breath. What? Jenny asked. Walter looked terrified. The previous owners never told me. Told you what? Walter swallowed hard. Every house in this neighborhood has a guardian. Lucas blinked. A what? A prisoner. The word echoed through the basement. Walter continued. Long ago, the founders discovered that one monster could be captured and bound beneath each home. Why would anyone do that? Jenny asked. Walter's expression darkened. Because the imprisoned creature keeps the others away. Silence filled the room. Lucas stared at the wall. There's a monster living inside our house. Walter nodded. Apparently. Thump. The wall shook again. This time dust fell from the ceiling. Walter stepped backward. His face had become deathly pale. That's not good. What do you mean? Lucas asked. The guardians are supposed to sleep. Another thump. Louder. Stronger. The bricks trembled visibly. Something massive moved behind them. Then came a voice. A low growl. A whisper that sounded like gravel grinding together. Free me. Jenny screamed. Walter immediately pulled a small silver charm from his pocket. The whisper stopped. For a moment. Then laughter emerged from behind the wall. Deep. Cruel. Ancient. That night nobody slept. The basement continued shaking every few hours. Each time the voice grew clearer. More human. More intelligent. At 3:13 a.m., Lucas awoke to a new sound. Footsteps. Inside the house. Slow. Heavy. Deliberate. Jenny was asleep beside him. Lucas grabbed a flashlight. The footsteps came from downstairs. From the direction of the basement. His pulse raced. Walter had insisted the creature was still imprisoned. So what was walking around below? The footsteps stopped. Then came a loud creak. The basement door opening. Lucas stared toward the hallway. His blood turned to ice. Because he distinctly remembered locking that door before bed. The footsteps began climbing the stairs. One step at a time. Slowly. Patiently. Closer. 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 Lucas couldn't breathe. A shadow appeared beneath the bedroom door. Far too large to belong to a human. Then the footsteps stopped directly outside. Silence. A long, unbearable silence. Then 3 knocks echoed through the room. Knock. 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 And a familiar voice whispered from the other side. A voice that should have been impossible. A voice belonging to the neighbor who had died the night before. Lucas. The voice trembled. Please let me in. Lucas's heart nearly stopped. Because whatever stood outside that door. It knew his name. Lucas. The voice outside the bedroom door trembled with fear. Please, help me. Lucas stood frozen. Jenny awoke instantly. What is that? The voice came again. I don't want to die. It was unmistakable. The neighbor. The same man they had watched being dragged into the darkness. The same man who should have been dead. Lucas took a step toward the door. Jenny grabbed his arm. Don't. But what if? No. Her voice cracked. That's not him. Outside, the thing laughed softly. A low chuckle. As if it knew they were arguing. Knock. 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 The sound echoed through the room. Then came another voice. A woman's voice. Old. Frail. Terrified. The old woman from across the street. Please open the door. Jenny's face drained of color. No. The voice became desperate. They got me. A sob followed. Please don't leave me out here. Lucas felt sick. It sounded so real. Too real. Then the thing outside made a mistake. For one brief second, both voices spoke at once. The neighbor. And the old woman. Their words overlapped unnaturally. Like 2 recordings playing together. The illusion shattered. Whatever stood outside wasn't human. The creature growled. Its patience was gone. A claw scraped across the bedroom door. Wood splintered. Another scrape followed. Deeper. Longer. Lucas and Jenny backed away. The entire door trembled. Then. A siren wailed outside. The creature immediately became silent. For several seconds nothing happened. Then rapid footsteps retreated down the hallway. The thing was gone. At least for now. Morning brought little comfort. Lucas rushed downstairs. The basement door stood wide open. The lock had been twisted into a mangled piece of metal. Jenny stared in horror. Neither remembered opening it. Slowly they descended the stairs. The air smelled foul. Like wet earth and rotting meat. At the bottom, they found something scratched into the stone floor. 3 words. Let me out. The letters were carved several inches deep. As though enormous claws had written them. Walter arrived within the hour. The moment he saw the message, he looked terrified. This has never happened before. What hasn't? Jenny asked. The Guardian communicating. Lucas folded his arms. You keep calling it a Guardian. Walter stared at the sealed wall. It's still a monster. A loud thump interrupted him. The basement shook. Dust drifted from the ceiling. Then came the voice. Clearer than ever. He's coming. The 3 of them froze. Walter slowly approached the wall. Who? For several seconds there was only silence. Then the creature whispered. The king. Walter stumbled backward. For the first time, Lucas saw genuine panic. "What does that mean?" Jenny demanded. Walter didn't answer. Instead, he left immediately. That evening the neighborhood held an emergency HOA meeting. Every resident attended. The atmosphere was tense. Fear hung in the air like smoke. Walter stood before the crowd. His hands trembled. "The barrier is weakening." Murmurs spread through the room. An elderly man stood. "How long?" Walter hesitated. "Days." The room erupted into chaos. People shouted. Some cried. Others prayed. Lucas felt a knot form in his stomach. Whatever was happening, everyone already knew how bad it was. After the meeting, the old woman from across the street approached them. Her name was Margaret. She looked exhausted. As though she hadn't slept in weeks. "You need to leave." Lucas sighed. "We were told nobody can leave." Margaret glanced around nervously. Then leaned closer. "That's a lie." Both of them stared. "What?" Margaret swallowed. "There is a way out." Jenny's eyes widened. "Then why doesn't everyone leave?" Tears filled the old woman's eyes. "Because the HOA won't let them." Before she could explain further, a black SUV suddenly pulled up. Several HOA members stepped out. Margaret immediately fell silent. Fear flooded her face. One of the members stared directly at her. Not blinking. Not moving. Watching. Margaret hurried away without another word. That night, Lucas couldn't sleep. Something about Margaret's warning bothered him. The HOA was hiding something. He was sure of it. At exactly 2:46 a.m., he heard a noise outside his bedroom window. Not scratching. Not whispering. A voice. A child's voice. Lucas slowly peeked through a tiny gap in the curtain. What he saw nearly stopped his heart. Dozens of children stood silently in the street. Motionless. Staring directly at his house. Their skin was pale gray. Their eyes glowed red. And standing among them was a towering figure nearly 10 feet tall. A figure wearing what looked like a crown made of bone. The creature slowly raised its head. And smiled. Then every child pointed toward Lucas's window at the exact same moment. Because somehow, they knew he was watching. Lucas stumbled backward from the window. His heart hammered against his ribs. "Jenny." She bolted upright. "What happened?" Lucas couldn't answer immediately. His throat felt dry. "There are people outside." Jenny rushed to the curtain. "No." Lucas grabbed her arm before she could look. The survival booklet flashed through his mind. Do not look outside during a siren event. But it was too late. A faint red glow slipped through the gap in the curtain. Jenny froze. Her eyes widened. Then she whispered. "Oh God." The sirens suddenly erupted. A deafening howl filled the neighborhood. Outside, hundreds of voices began screaming. Not human screams. Something worse. The sounds of creatures celebrating. Hunting. Waiting. Lucas pulled Jenny away from the window. They sat on the floor as the nightmare continued outside. Then came a sound neither had heard before. A knock at the front door. One knock. Heavy enough to shake the entire house. Boom. The walls trembled. Another followed. Boom. The foundation groaned. Whatever stood outside was enormous. Then a voice echoed through the house. Deep. Ancient. Powerful. Open. The single word felt wrong. As if reality itself disliked hearing it. The windows rattled. The lights flickered. And deep beneath the house, the imprisoned guardian began roaring. The basement wall shook violently. Thump. 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 The guardian was no longer whispering. It was screaming. A horrible roar that sounded like thousands of voices trapped together. He is here. Lucas and Jenny stared at each other. The king. The thing the guardian had warned them about. Outside, the giant creature knocked again. Boom. Cracks appeared in the living room ceiling. The house groaned under the impact. Then the voice returned. Calm. Patient. Certain. Lucas. Jenny's face went white. It knew his name. Jenny. The creature laughed softly. You don't belong here. The words echoed through every room. You can still leave. Lucas felt a surge of hope. Maybe Margaret had been right. Maybe there really was a way out. Then the guardian's voice exploded from the basement. Liar. The entire house shook. The front door suddenly burst inward. Not completely. Just enough to splinter. A massive claw pushed through the opening. The claw was black as coal and covered in burning cracks. Like molten lava beneath dead skin. Lucas and Jenny ran upstairs. The survival booklet had warned them never to run upstairs if a creature entered the house. But terror overpowered logic. They reached the second floor. Then remembered the rule. Too late. A long silence followed. No footsteps. No pursuit. Nothing. The quiet felt worse than the noise. Suddenly, something moved at the far end of the hallway. A child. A little girl wearing a white dress. She stood completely still. Her head hung downward. Long black hair covered her face. Jenny whispered. Where did she come from? The girl slowly raised her head. There was no face beneath the hair. Only darkness. Endless darkness. Then dozens of tiny red eyes opened inside that darkness. Lucas grabbed Jenny. Run! The creature screamed. A shrill, inhuman sound that shattered every light bulb upstairs. They locked themselves inside the master bedroom. The thing clawed at the hallway walls outside. Wood splintered. Drywall crumbled. Its laughter echoed throughout the second floor. Then came another sound. A crash from below. The basement. The guardian. For several seconds everything became silent. Then a deafening roar erupted from beneath the house. The sealed wall had broken. The guardian was free. The entire neighborhood shook. Outside, monsters screamed. Inside, two titanic creatures roared at each other. One from hell. One from beneath the house. The sounds were so loud that windows exploded throughout the neighborhood. Lucas looked outside for a brief second. The streets had become a battlefield. Towering demonic creatures filled the darkness. Burning eyes glowed everywhere. And at the center of it all stood the crowned monster. The Bone King. Nearly 15 feet tall. His skeletal crown stretched toward the sky. His smile was impossibly wide. And standing before him was the guardian. A colossal beast covered in chains and ancient symbols carved into its flesh. The two monsters charged. The collision shook the entire neighborhood. As the battle began outside, Lucas noticed something terrifying. The Bone King wasn't looking at the guardian anymore. He was looking directly at the house. Directly at him. Then the Bone King pointed one enormous finger toward Lucas. And whispered a single sentence. A sentence Lucas somehow heard despite the distance. Bring them to me. Instantly, every monster in the neighborhood turned toward the house. And started running. The monsters surged toward the house like a living tidal wave. Hundreds of glowing red eyes pierced the darkness. Claws scraped across pavement. Twisted bodies crawled over fences and rooftops. And leading them all was the Bone King. Lucas felt his blood turn to ice. "We're dead." Jenny squeezed his hand. "No." But her voice lacked confidence. Outside, the Guardian roared. The chained beast slammed into the oncoming horde. Monsters exploded beneath its claws. Others were torn apart by its massive jaws. For the first time, the creatures of hell seemed afraid. Yet the Bone King continued forward. Slow. Unstoppable. Smiling. Then every streetlight in the neighborhood suddenly went dark. The Bone King stopped. His smile vanished. Something else had arrived. Something powerful. Something even the monsters feared. A deep church bell echoed through the night. Once. Twice. 3 times. The creatures froze. The Guardian froze. Even the Bone King turned toward the center of the neighborhood. The old HOA building. A hidden door beneath the building opened. Ancient stone stairs descended into darkness. And from that darkness emerged Walter Briggs. But he wasn't alone. Dozens of HOA members followed him. Each carried a black candle burning with blue flame. They formed a circle in the middle of the street. Then Walter raised both hands. The ground shook. Cracks spread across the pavement. Glowing red light erupted from beneath the neighborhood. Lucas watched in disbelief. "What are they doing?" Jenny whispered. "I don't think they're trying to save us." The truth finally revealed itself. The HOA wasn't protecting the neighborhood. The HOA had created it. More than 100 years ago, the founders had opened the gateway to hell intentionally. Not by accident. Not by mistake. By choice. They wanted power. Knowledge. Immortality. The bargain they struck was simple. Every few years, hell would receive souls. In exchange, the HOA leaders would receive unnaturally long lives. Walter Briggs wasn't 70 years old. He was 163. The neighborhood wasn't a prison for monsters. It was a farm. The residents were livestock. Sacrifices. Food. Lucas felt sick. Every family that disappeared. Every mysterious death. Every accident. All planned. All part of the bargain. The Bone King laughed. A booming laugh that shook every house. "You failed, Walter." Walter's face darkened. "We held the gate for a century." The Bone King took another step forward. Flames erupted beneath his feet. "And now the gate belongs to me." The sky cracked. Literally cracked. Like shattered glass spreading across the heavens. Red light poured through the fractures. The gateway was opening wider than ever before. Suddenly, Margaret appeared beside Lucas and Jenny. Neither knew how she had entered the house. The old woman looked terrified. "You have to come with me." Lucas stared. "You know a way out?" Margaret nodded. "There has always been a way." "Then why didn't anyone use it?" Tears filled her eyes. "Because it requires a sacrifice." Silence. A terrible silence. Margaret revealed the final secret. The imprisoned guardian beneath each house wasn't merely a monster. It had originally been a human. A volunteer. Someone who willingly became a prison for hell. A living lock. A protector. The guardian beneath Lucas's house had once been Margaret's son. Daniel. More than 30 years ago. She had sacrificed him to save the neighborhood. And now the lock was failing. The house suddenly shook violently. A claw burst through the wall. Monsters were breaking inside. Jenny screamed. Lucas grabbed a broken table leg as a weapon. The Bone King's army was coming. There was no time left. Margaret led them into the basement. The shattered wall now revealed a hidden stone tunnel descending deep underground. Ancient symbols glowed along its walls. The Guardian stood at the tunnel entrance. The massive chained creature slowly turned toward Margaret. For the first time, Lucas saw tears in the old woman's eyes. The monster lowered its enormous head. Almost like a son recognizing his mother. Then it spoke. One final time. In a voice that sounded painfully human. "Mom." Margaret broke down crying. Behind them, monsters flooded into the house. The Bone King's laughter echoed through every room. The final battle was beginning. And at the bottom of the tunnel waited the original gateway to hell. The only place where the nightmare could end. Or where all of reality could be destroyed. The tunnel descended deep beneath the neighborhood. Far below the streets. Far below the foundations of every house. Far below the world of the living. Lucas, Jenny, Margaret, and the Guardian hurried through the darkness while monstrous screams echoed behind them. The walls trembled. The Bone King's army was coming. And they were running out of time. At the end of the tunnel stood a colossal stone chamber. Lucas stopped breathing. The chamber was larger than a cathedral. Ancient pillars stretched into darkness above. And at its center hung a gigantic crimson rift. The original gateway. The door to hell. It floated in midair like a wound in reality itself. Red fire spilled from the opening. Countless shadowy hands reached from within. Thousands of tortured voices whispered at once. Begging. Threatening. Laughing. Crying. The sound alone nearly drove Lucas insane. "The gate is fully opening," Margaret whispered. Jenny stared in horror. "What happens if it opens completely?" Nobody answered. Because they already knew. Everything would end. A thunderous roar echoed through the chamber. The Bone King had arrived. He emerged from the tunnel entrance like a walking nightmare. 15 feet tall. Covered in black armor fused to his flesh. His crown of bone burned with crimson fire. Behind him poured an endless horde of demons. The army of hell. The final invasion had begun. The Guardian stepped forward. Massive chains rattled around its body. The creature looked toward Lucas. Then Jenny. Then Margaret. For a brief moment, the monster seemed human again. Daniel. Margaret's son. The boy she had lost decades ago. The Guardian smiled sadly. Then turned toward the Bone King. The two titans collided. The impact shattered pillars. The floor cracked. The chamber shook violently. The Guardian's chains wrapped around the Bone King's neck. The Bone King tore through the chains with brute force. Claws ripped flesh. Teeth crushed bone. Fire exploded everywhere. The battle looked like gods fighting at the end of the world. Meanwhile, Walter Briggs and the surviving HOA members entered the chamber. Their blue candles still burned. Walter's face had become desperate. "You don't understand," he screamed. "We kept humanity safe." The Bone King laughed. A horrible laugh. "You fed us for a century." Walter raised a ceremonial dagger. "Without us, hell would have consumed the earth long ago." Margaret stepped forward. "No." Her voice echoed through the chamber. "You were never protecting anyone." Walter froze. "You were protecting yourselves." The old man suddenly looked tired. Ancient. Broken. For a moment, his centuries of stolen life showed through. Wrinkles spread across his skin. His hair turned white. His body weakened. The bargain was ending. Hell was no longer honoring its deal. Walter collapsed. Aged hundreds of years in seconds. Then he turned to dust. The remaining HOA members screamed as the same fate consumed them. Within moments, nothing remained except piles of gray ash. The gateway grew larger. The red rift stretched across the chamber ceiling. Reality itself began tearing apart. Lucas felt the ground crumbling beneath his feet. "We're out of time." Margaret nodded. "There is only one way." Lucas already knew what she meant. Another sacrifice. Another guardian. Another living lock. Before anyone could speak, Jenny stepped forward. "No." Lucas stared. "What are you doing?" Tears filled her eyes. "You wanted this house because it was our future." Her voice trembled. "Now I'm going to save everyone's future." Lucas grabbed her hand. "No." Jenny smiled sadly. "I love you." Then she ran toward the gateway. But someone moved faster. The guardian. Daniel. Margaret's son. The chained monster leaped between Jenny and the rift. He turned toward his mother one last time. A peaceful expression crossed his monstrous face. Then he spoke. The final words Margaret would ever hear from him. "I'll hold the fort." The guardian plunged into the gateway. The chamber exploded with blinding light. The Bone King screamed. For the first time, the ruler of hell felt fear. Chains erupted from the rift. Millions of glowing chains. They wrapped around the Bone King. Around the demons. Around the gateway itself. Dragging everything back. Back into darkness. Back into hell. The Bone King clawed at the floor. At reality. At existence itself. His burning eyes locked onto Lucas. Then he smiled. One last terrible smile. "We will meet again." And then he was gone. The gateway sealed. The red light vanished. The whispers stopped. The silence felt unreal. For the first time in over a century. The doorway to hell was closed. Completely. Forever. Weeks later, the neighborhood no longer existed. Every house had been demolished. Every secret buried. The land was abandoned. Empty. Peaceful. Normal. As though none of it had ever happened. Lucas and Jenny eventually moved away. Far away. They never bought another house. They never joined another HOA. And they never spoke publicly about what happened beneath that neighborhood. Because nobody would have believed them. Yet sometimes, late at night, Lucas still remembered Daniel's final words. The words that saved humanity. The words spoken by a monster who had once been a man. "I'll hold the fort." And somewhere beyond the veil of reality. In the darkness between worlds. Something still whispered back. Waiting. Watching. Patient. The end. Some gates should never be opened. Some heroes are never remembered. And some forts must be held forever. Boger Derelict House Fire.